All right, second grade, we are back. And we are going to finish chapter 3 today. We're going to have all the tools we need to identify a witch out in the wild and stay clear of them. Yesterday we learned a lot about how they dress. Today we're going to learn some more information. I'm excited to get into this, so I'm not going to hold you up anymore. Go ahead and listen.
Are there other things? I asked. Of course there are other things, my grandmother said. You don't seem to understand that witches are not actually women at all. They look like women, they talk like women, and they are able to act like women, but in actual fact they are totally different animals. They are demons in human shape. That is why they have claws and bald heads and queer noses and peculiar eyes, all of which they have to conceal as best they can from the rest of the world. What else is different about them, Grandmama? The feet, she said. Witches never have toes. No toes, I cried. Then what do they have? They just have feet, my grandmother said. The feet have square ends with no toes on them at all. Does that make it difficult to walk? I asked. Not at all, my grandmother said. But it does give them a problem with their shoes. All ladies like to wear small, rather pointed shoes, but a witch, whose feet are very wide and square at the ends, has the most awful job squeezing her feet into those neat little pointed shoes. Why doesn't she wear wide, comfy shoes with square ends? I asked. She dare not, my grandmother said. Just as she hides her baldness with a wig, she must also hide her ugly witch's feet by squeezing them into pretty shoes. Isn't that terribly uncomfortable? I said. Extremely uncomfortable, my grandmother said. But she has to put up with it. If she's wearing ordinary shoes, it won't help me to recognize her, will it, Grandmama? I'm afraid it won't, my grandmother said. You might possibly see her limping very slightly, but only if you are watching closely. Are those the only differences then, Grandmama? There's one more, my grandmother said. Just one more. What is it, Grandmama? Their spit is blue. Blue? I cried. Not blue. Their spit can't be blue. Blue as a bilberry, she said. You don't mean it, Grandmama. Nobody can have blue spit. Witches can, she said. Is it like ink? I asked. Exactly, she said. They even use it to write with. They use those old-fashioned pens that have nibs, and they simply lick the nib. Can you notice the blue spit, Grandmama? If a witch was talking to me, would I be able to notice it? Only if you were looking carefully, my grandmother said. If you looked very carefully, you would probably see a slight bluish tinge on her teeth, but it doesn't show much. What if she spat? I said. Witches never spit, my grandmother said. They daren't. I couldn't believe my grandmother would be lying to me. She went to church every morning of the week, and she said grace before every meal, and somebody who did that would never tell lies. I was beginning to believe every word she spoke. So there you are, my grandmother said. That's about all I can tell you. None of it is very helpful. You can still never be absolutely sure whether a woman is a witch, or not just by looking at her. But if she is wearing the gloves, if she has the large nose holes, the weird eyes, and the hair that looks as though it might be a wig, and if she has a bluish tinge on her teeth, if she has all of these things, then you run like mad. Grandmama, I said, when you were a little girl, did you ever meet a witch? Once, my grandmother said. Only once. What happened? I'm not going to tell you, she said. It would frighten you out of your skin and give you bad dreams. Please tell me, I begged. No, she said. Certain things are too horrible to talk about. Does it have something to do with your missing thumb? I asked. Suddenly her old wrinkled lips shut tight as a pair of tongs, and the hand that held the cigar, which had no thumb on it, began to quiver very slightly. I waited. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak. All of a sudden, she had shut herself off completely. The conversation was finished. Good night, Grandmama, I said. rising from the floor and kissing her on the cheek. She didn't move. I crept out of the room and went to my bed.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So now we know that the witches have a problem with their feet. Hard time walking around in regular everyday shoes. We're learning that witches have ink for spit. I don't know if you see that coming out the corner of his mouth. I don't know, maybe if you watch him eat, you can check that out. And we're also finding out that Grandma is missing a thumb. Take a moment to think about what life would be like if you were missing one of your thumbs. What are some things you couldn't do? You really need that thumb, I believe, but you really do need it. And it was such a terrible situation, Grandma doesn't want to talk about it. I do want to look at Roald Dahl's dynamic use of bodies. When we go back to Charlie and Chocolate Factory, kids are swelling up, kids are being stretched, all kinds of things are happening, and here we've got witches where things are going on with feet, things are going on with their heads and their fingers. A lot of messing around there. Very interesting, but now we know how to identify a witch, and if only we know how to stay away from them after we've identified them. I don't know, it sounds like a tough part. What do you guys think? See you tomorrow.